The murder of José and Kitty Menendez in their Beverly Hills mansion on August 20, 1989, and the sensational trials of their sons, Lyle and Erik Menendez, captivated the nation and became one of the most infamous true crime cases in American history. The brutal nature of the killings, the family's affluent status, and the shocking revelations that emerged during the trials transformed the case into a cultural phenomenon, spawning documentaries, books, and even dramatizations. José Menendez was a Cuban immigrant who rose to become a wealthy entertainment executive, working with companies like RCA Records and Live Entertainment. His wife, Mary Louise Kitty Menendez, was a former schoolteacher from Illinois. Together, they had two sons, Lyle, born in 1968, and Erik, born in 1970. The Menendez family enjoyed a lavish lifestyle, living in a Beverly Hills mansion and vacationing in exotic locales. To outsiders, they appeared to be the embodiment of the American dream. However, beneath the surface, the family dynamic was reportedly tense and dysfunctional. On the night of August 20, 1989, José and Kitty Menendez were shot to death in their home. The scene was grisly. José had been shot in the head, and Kitty was shot multiple times, leaving her nearly unrecognizable. The brutality of the murders initially led investigators to suspect a mob-style hit, possibly related to José's business dealings. Lyle and Erik, then 21 and 18 years old, claimed they had gone to the movies and returned home to find their parents murdered. They made a tearful 911 call, and their apparent grief initially diverted suspicion. However, inconsistencies in their stories and their extravagant spending habits following the murders raised red flags. In the months following the murders, Lyle and Erik began spending huge sums of money. Lyle bought a Porsche, Erik hired a tennis coach, and both indulged in luxury clothing and trips. The brothers spent nearly $1 million of their parents' money in the months after the killings. Their behavior prompted further investigation, and eventually, Erik confessed to his psychologist, Dr. Jerome Oziel, during a therapy session. When Oziel's mistress, afraid for her own safety, reported the confession to the police, it became the key evidence needed to arrest the brothers in 1990. The trials of Lyle and Erik Menendez began in 1993 and were among the first to be broadcast on live television, drawing widespread public attention. The defense stunned the courtroom by revealing a new narrative. The brothers had killed their parents out of fear and desperation after enduring years of sexual, emotional, and physical abuse, particularly at the hands of their father. The brothers claimed that José Menendez was a controlling, abusive father who sexually molested both sons from a young age. They alleged that their mother, Kitty, was aware of the abuse but failed to protect them. According to the defense, the killings were not premeditated murders, but an act of self-preservation by two deeply traumatized young men who believed their lives were in danger. The defense introduced journal entries, witness testimony, and family history to support their claims. The emotional testimony of Erik and Lyle on the witness stand swayed some observers and brought national attention to issues of abuse and family trauma. The prosecution, however, painted a starkly different picture. They argued that the murders were motivated by greed and the desire to inherit the family fortune. They highlighted the calculated nature of the crime, the purchase of shotguns weeks prior, and the brothers' immediate spending spree as evidence of premeditation. Prosecutors also questioned the veracity of the abuse claims, suggesting that they were fabricated as a legal strategy after the brothers had been arrested. The first trials, which were conducted separately for each brother but overseen by the same judge, resulted in hung juries in 1994. Jurors were divided on whether the abuse justified the killings. As a result, mistrials were declared. In the second joint trial, which began in 1995, the judge limited the defense's ability to present evidence of abuse, and the case was retried with a narrower scope. In March 1996, both Lyle and Erik Menendez were convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The Menendez brothers were sent to separate prisons and had limited contact for decades. In 2018, they were reunited at the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego County. In recent years, the case has received renewed attention on platforms like TikTok, where a younger generation has expressed sympathy for the brothers and called for their release based on the abuse allegations. The Menendez case remains controversial. While some see Lyle and Erik as cold-blooded killers who murdered their parents for money, others view them as victims who responded to years of torment with a desperate and tragic act. The brothers have exhausted most of their legal appeals, but their supporters continue to push for clemency or a retrial based on evolving views of trauma and domestic abuse. Whether viewed as monsters or misunderstood victims, Lyle and Erik Menendez have left an indelible mark on the American legal and cultural landscape.